please introduce yourself for the audience?
Hi everyone, I'm Erika. My journey at Solstice started in August of 2024, and I just ended my treatment in January of 2026. About myself, I love design and art, and I also love mindfulness. I'm a big fan and follower of Thich Nhat Hanh. So a lot of meditation, a studying of that. All right, we're not going to use this, but that's okay. Yeah, so when I started my journey here, I was at the lowest point in my life. I can say for a fact that if it weren't for Solstice, I probably wouldn't be here today. Yes, I'm married to a wonderful man, and my little dog's name is Max. I love spending time with him at the dog park. Our life is pretty simple. It was a very different life when I was working nonstop, and my life has really improved. I've learned how to really appreciate life now, and I can say I'm present. So when I talk about my home, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful to be alive, which it was really painful to be alive a couple of years ago. And I love traveling too. After I finished I was still at Solstice, and I had not been able to travel internationally. And as an inspiration for myself, I went back to Japan, and I went on my own. I just decided it was time to go back to the things that I loved and the places that I loved, and one of them was Japan. I actually spent some time there with a fellow Solstice member, and it was wonderful. It was really amazing. So for me, international travel, design, art is a fuel for me, as well as good conversations. Good conversations are, for me, like fuel. Being around people. Coming to Solstice, I had the opportunity to be in person with, other people going through the same struggles that I was going through, and having that one-on-one, personal relationship with others, and seeing that I was not the only one going through it really changed everything. It made me appreciate, other people and not be isolated, not wanting, I didn't want to be isolated anymore. And so sharing here, I made friends quick, you become really close when you're in this kind of environment. And it gives you a hope that there's no way you can do it alone. So I've met some of my lifelong friends here at Solstice. And that's why it's so dear to my heart. And yeah, that's one of the big things that I appreciate. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is cancer and women's life post-cancer. There's very little information on that, like what happens after. And there's a lot of mental health involved in that. And that is part of my journey. And another thing that I'm very passionate about is mental health and destigmatizing mental health, because it is such a taboo topic in life, and I have suffered from that. Not only the taboo, but also the little understanding out there in the world. So yeah, those are the things I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about those topics, and I'm becoming an advocate. I am an advocate, and I am, being here today and talking about my experience is part of that commitment that I have to help other people. I honestly don't get anything in return, but I don't want others to go through my struggles. So I share my journey with people and with other women. I think as women, we have so much on our plates, and so much is expected from us that it's very easy to have to go through things alone. So it's a topic that I share with my friends and my family.
So how did you first hear about Solstice?
The first time I heard about Solstice was through my psychiatrist. I was in one of the most difficult times, career-wise. I was burning the midnight oil. I had not slept for like months. I want to say I would just sleep a tiny bit at night. I was always stressed out. And in that year, I had gotten sick with COVID 3 times, which is not normal. I was having serious issues at work. And I was just working and not really taking care of myself. I had completely abandoned myself. I abandoned my body. I abandoned everything. There were no boundaries. I had to perform. And eventually I burnt out at work. And at that point, I hit rock bottom. I spoke to my psychiatrist and I was like, I can't continue. This is too much for me. And he was, so my psychiatrist recommended a Solstice. He sent, all the information. And I looked over it, and when I saw it, I was a little bit suspicious. I was skeptical, to be honest. I was on a leave of absence, so I had the time to start. But I thought there was nothing that could help me at that point. That first encounter with Solstice, I was ready, to start my journey. And during that time, I found out that I had breast cancer. So it was even, I was like, I can't believe, like, really, can this get worse? And so we had to stop it. My process for starting Solstice. So I went through all the cancer therapy. I went through my chemo. I completely stopped anything that had to do or that would take time away from that. So my mental health went to the back burner. And so I went through a very harsh chemotherapy. I also had to go through radiation and surgery. And at that time, I had no idea what cancer and hormones were going to do to me. My cognition completely destroyed for the duration of my chemotherapy. And after that, I want to say for like a long time, especially because while I was in this process of healing, I was laid off from work. So I was ready to come to Solstice, and I found out that I had cancer. So we had to reschedule. I had to prioritize my cancer recovery. I had to put my mental health in the back burner at that moment, because I had to fight for my life in a moment that the last thing that I wanted to do was fight for my life. I honestly did not want to be alive at that point. But my family and my friends, they were my inspiration to continue to go through the chemo, to go through the therapy. I was very broken already from all the things that I experienced at work. And this just brought on a lot more physical and mental pain. And there were other issues while I was in my therapy. I was told that my job was redundant and that I had to basically part ways. That was a very hard blow on me. You know, it implied a lot of things. It implied health insurance wasn't going to be a thing anymore. So that happened to me as well. And I was like, okay, you know, now this is really rock bottom. So I continued. I spoke with my psychiatrist and we said, you know, it's time after your surgery, you know, it is time for your mental health. And so I came back. I called Solstice, and after my radiation, I started my treatment the week after my last radiation, and I was still in treatment when I came in here. I came in and I was greeted by warm people who didn't care that I was a shell of myself. I came in and I wouldn't shower. That was the level that I was at. I barely made it in here. It was hard to wake up every day. I didn't want to be alive. Honestly, I was in like a twilight zone. My whole life had been like a rug was pulled from underneath. And painful doesn't begin to explain where I was at that time. And things changed. They started to change. In my case, it was really hard to even sit. I remember coming in and feeling like I couldn't be around people. Like I couldn't sit on a chair. I had been in bed for almost 2 years. No, I had been in bed for a year. I couldn't walk that much. And so coming here and sitting and being around people felt very foreign to me. But after a few months, in my case, actually after a few weeks, I started making friends. I started to see the value of what we were doing here. And it was a hard process. The first few weeks, I thought I was not going to make it through. And it was hard because I was not in a good place physically or mentally. So that's where my journey began with Solstice.
So the next question is, what made you decide to reach out for help? You kind of answered it already in the other question, but is there anything else you want to add?
I reached out to Solstice because I honestly didn't know how to get out of that hole. Mm-hmm. It was just too much to do alone. And it was the moment.
Do you feel like it took more effort to reach out that second time since you'd already previously reached out and had to put a pause on your treatment?
I would say so. I would say that it was harder to call that second time because I was so defeated. Mm-hmm. I think that's the word that describes me coming in here. I was defeated. I was, I surrendered. I was like, they know what I need to do. I'm just going to trust. I'm going to trust the process because there were no other options. The other option, honestly, was not aligned with my values. And
what was life feeling like before you started here at Solstice?
Before Solstice, I want to say my life was not mine. Depression and anxiety had taken over everything. I was very dissociated. I didn't know who I was. I mean, when I tell you, I forgot everything that I loved. Now it's very easy for me to tell you, oh my gosh, I love design, I love art. I had completely forgotten what I loved. I just went through the motions every day, and some days I could get up, some days I couldn't. I was sick all the time. I wasn't sleeping. It was painful to be alive when that second time, or even when I first reached out to Solstice, I felt that way. And I had been feeling that way for several years.
The next question is, if you're comfortable sharing, tell us a bit about your mental health journey prior to Solstice.
So prior to Solstice, I've always been very open about my mental health struggles. I had always had therapy, talk therapy. A lot of it, honestly, was extremely helpful. But I never had tools. I didn't have a toolbox. So I was very dependent on having my therapist. It was almost like a security blanket. Or when I would be frustrated a lot of the time. So I would say I would self-medicate, mostly with food. Also, some of my prescription drugs were something like they were a safety blanket for me. I couldn't leave home without my medication. I would shop a lot, and I would sleep. Oh my goodness, would I sleep? I slept. I overslept. I was like in a freeze mode, I would say, because I had gone through so much, and it was, a lot of it was warranted. But my reaction to what was going on around me was not good. I had put myself on hold all this time before coming to Solstice. And among those things, were all the bad habits that had formed, that had really been detrimental to myself. Overworking, eating in excess, and as well as a big codependence, trying to save everybody else but myself. And yeah, I was pretty much out of control when I came to Solstice, before coming here.
What was the moment or event that occurred that made you or your loved ones realize that you needed the help of Solstice?
The moment that I realized that I needed to come to Solstice was when nothing else worked. I tried everything, and the one thing I hadn't tried was to stop and pause my life for a chunk of time and really dedicate that time to myself. I always put others ahead of myself, and it was a personal decision. I didn't need anybody to tell me this is what you need to do. I took it seriously when my psychiatrist gave me the alternative. It was my decision when I came here. I didn't know what I was signing up for, but it was my choice, and I don't regret it at all.
What concerns or hesitations did you have about receiving treatment?
My concerns were really out of those bad habits that I had. Like, how am I going to, live my life without those things? How am I going to have a plan for my day that's well-being throughout the day, and conscious? I don't think I can do it, That was like, I was so defeated again, like failing for me at another area of my life. I was scared of that. I was also physically struggling, cognitively struggling. I didn't think I was able to take in all the information that I needed to take in. And I was scared. I think fear was a big barrier. Because as I said, I signed up for Solstice and I had no idea what to expect. So I was scared of taking this time for myself. That was my biggest concern.
What surprised you most about your experience here at Solstice?
What surprised me most about my experience at Solstice was how holistic it was. At first I was like, okay, this is going to be a rehab where I'm going to sit with strangers and be told what to do. This is the way to do things. And it was surprising for me to come in here and have art therapy. I was like, okay, why am I painting a rock right now? I was skeptical. Then, we did yoga, and we did a kind of yoga that I had never done in my life. I mean, Ashley, our facilitator, really went through where the body keeps the emotions. That was fascinating to me. I would do yoga and I would be crying on my mat. Like all of these pent up emotions would come out. Just taking that time for myself. I didn't know how powerful that was going to be. It was beautiful, It was beautiful after a while. It was really hard work. It was not easy. I mean, you dig deep. You dig deep into the things that you probably hadn't looked into forever and that you have kept inside, and you were sharing with people who truly cared. Outside of here, my mental health was not understood. So I would keep it to myself. I would share it with my therapist, but there weren't, other people that were going through it. And so everybody had a different situation. I mean, there were people who were using, there were people who, I had one of our peers who had just had a baby, and, it was really about the struggles. The struggles were completely different, but we were all seeking that mental well-being, and we really supported each other. That was the most surprising thing. It was that the method was so innovative, and it was not your typical, okay, I'm the therapist, tell me about your trauma, or tell me what happened to you. It was just not just that. We had talk. We had, guests come in and talk with us. It was just very integrative. There was not one part of the whole of myself that was not addressed while I was here. And that was so refreshing. It was something I had never experienced. And I've had a long history of mental health issues.
How did the team here at Solstice make you feel supported?
The team at Solstice was my rock. To be honest, there were days when I didn't think I would make it through the day. And, Rachel at the front desk would go out of her way to help me feel like, okay, you got this, you're gonna be okay. And that's just one example. Every single staff member cared, they cared about how you were doing. It was not a transactional thing. It wasn't like, okay, you're here, you're a patient, and that's it. It was human. Everybody here showed me how much they cared. And I felt at home coming here, like that real home, not that dysfunctional place, but that place where everybody has the same goal, and there's care for all of us. So there was help in every way. There was help learning new things, learning about how the body keeps the score, how, you know, there are people who care out there. And, you know, it also empowered me a lot. There were days when I wanted to give up, and where I wouldn't be, you know, I'd be like, oh, okay, I don't want to go today. And I'd get a call. Hi, are you okay? Where are you? It was, again, it was a team. It was a team, and everybody here is extraordinary. You know, they love what they're doing. And you can feel it the moment you come in here. Everybody loves helping others.
What felt different about Solstice?
What felt different about Solstice was the approach, the holistic approach, and the people that we dealt with, you know, the staff members. I mean, you can't open up and show yourself, you know, in your darkest moment if you don't trust the people. Honestly, there's no way that you'll do the hard work and that you'll be vulnerable if the people that work here or the staff members don't make us feel comfortable. And that was never the case. I was always comfortable here. There were also innovations that I had never experienced. One of them was TMS, which is a therapy that uses, I believe, electric pulses. And I was like, okay, what is this? And it was honestly great. I did Qigong. I did things that I had never tried. It was great. It was great. It was something I had never experienced.
What has changed for you since completing the program?
Oof. Since ending my treatment, I have started my own entrepreneur life, which is new for me. I've always worked for someone else. I have begun to really go back to the things that I love. I have traveled internationally again. I take care of myself. I set boundaries. I no longer let chaos dictate my life. I know there's unexpected things. It's not like I left here and my life was perfect. There's been tons of challenges, but now I have, you know, the tools to deal with whatever comes my way. I'm not frozen by things that I'm scared of. I can do hard things, which I couldn't. I would freeze. You know, I did a lot of hard things, but it was to the detriment of my mental health and my physical health. I've become an advocate for women's, you know, they call it femtech, but I've become an advocate for women's wellness and women's health post-cancer. And I have also become more vocal about mental health struggles. There's a lot of good things that have come after my treatment, but again, I think the best part is to be able to face challenges without reacting, responding to challenges. There's no way I would have started my own, you know, business before. I was too scared of that. So I'm empowered right now. I feel like I'm worthy of living my best life. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of loving myself. I would say that's the biggest change. Knowing that I deserve to be loved and that I deserve to be happy and to be alive. I would say after Solstice, after my treatment, after putting in the work, I can say that I look forward to waking up every day. Some days more than others. Some days I might not want to shower, but you know, a step at a time. Again, I don't react. I respond now. I take a step back and I think of, okay, how is this serving me? What's the next step that I need to take? How can I process this?
Looking back on your recovery journey, is there anything you would do differently?
Yes, looking back on my recovery journey, one of the things that I would do is involve my husband more. I did not involve him in the beginning, and I think one of the big things that came out of this treatment was asking for help. Because as I said, I came here, I don't know, I think it was a subconscious thing. I don't really know what made me decide to start. I mean, logically, I wasn't really here. There was something inside me that told me I had to come here. I know it sounds mystical, but that's what it was really like. And it was hard for me to ask for help from the people that were in my circle. A lot of it had to do with avoidance, and I think I was just not in a place to include, my husband at the time. But looking back, I would have included him more. And at the very beginning, I kind of gave up on it. Yeah, I would have done that. And honestly, it just coming here was, I took advantage of everything. I want to say there's not much I would change. Mm-hmm. Just asking for help while I was in treatment from the people around me.
Yeah. Do you think you would have included him sooner so that you would have had more family support and you would have still included your sister, or would you have solely included him as your family support?
So I think including, when I started at Solstice, I didn't want to include my husband as much because I feared that I was going to scare him. I felt like, honestly, like I didn't deserve to be taken care of, by my husband. I felt like that was a big thing that I had to process. And so I involved my sister, who was someone who understood mental health much more than my husband. I felt shame, to be honest. I felt ashamed to be a wife that was not functional. I didn't know how to explain my struggle to someone who hadn't had that kind of struggle. So it affected my marriage. It affected it a lot. But I just didn't have the tools. I didn't love myself enough at that time. So I had to involve somebody else who I didn't live with, which was my sister. And that felt better to me at the moment. But I wish that I would have somehow included him and make him see what I was going through. And it wasn't until the very end of my treatment, I would say like the last few months of my treatment, that I included my husband. And it changed everything. It changed my marriage. I'm not ashamed of my mental health, and he supports me. He really does.
Can you touch a little bit about the impact or importance you feel you had in program with having that family support from your sister and from your husband?
Having that family support, having my sister and my husband involved was huge. They kept me accountable. They showed support. They were like a safety net. They made me see that I was not alone, and it made it easier to believe that there were going to be good outcomes. So it was vital to have family support in my case. and also close friends. To be honest, I found most of my support was with my cohorts here. They understood it 100%, and I understood what they were going through. So there was less of that family dynamic, because sometimes it's tricky. A lot of the things that we are going through are, involving our family. And so it gets tricky because there's only so much of the family members that you have that can actually help. Some of them might not be the person to help you. So that's why it's so helpful to have others going through what you're going through and hearing from them. That was my biggest support. Also my sister, and my case manager, who was Lena, and I could always rely on her.
What would you tell another family considering Solstice?
To the families that are looking for help for their loved ones, I can imagine, and I know what it's like to be on that side, having had family members who also have had issues with mental health. Their experiences have not been great. They haven't had that luck that I had coming here. The experience has been, for them, it's been honestly more traumatic in some cases. What I can tell you, if you're looking for help for a family member at the moment, is trust the process, trust Solstice. To all the families that are looking for help and have no idea where to go for their loved one when it comes to mental health, I would seek support. I've sought support elsewhere, and in my case, it hasn't been a great experience. I can fully recommend Solstice Pacific, which is where I attended. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Solstice, if it weren't for the work I put in. I feel for you. I know what you're going through. It's a struggle. I've seen so many families that have come in not knowing what the fate of their child or their loved one is going to be. And I can tell you that I've seen those lives turn around. And it is one of the most amazing things that you can see, that you can experience when you've lost all hope. To the families that are considering Solstice, I imagine that what brought you here was some painful experiences with mental health. Don't lose hope. You are looking in the right direction. I would trust Solstice. Give it a shot. I did. I am a different person, and I have seen lives change and transform. It's not easy, and you will have to be involved, because mental health of one member of the family is not just up to them. It involves the whole family. So I can tell you, from my experience, keep supporting your family member, and you're on the right track. If you're looking into Solstice, I would recommend it to any of my family members, to anybody, going through something hard right now with their mental health. You're on the right track. Reach out, and, you will find answers. You will find a place, and you will find support. You will find people who will help you get through it. You don't have to do it alone. It's not you saving that family member. They will save themselves with the help of the staff here and others. You're doing the right thing, and you are not alone.
All right. Who would you recommend this program to?
That's a good question. Good, Barbara. Who would I recommend this? I would recommend Solstice to, anybody going through mental health struggles, but I want to specify people who have been through loss, many losses, not just deaths, but also loss of a job, loss of some part of your identity, loss of your health. When I came here, I could barely function. I was no longer, the so-and-so director. I was, again, a shell of who I was before. So if you've lost important parts of yourself, if you lost a loved one, if you are experiencing hardships that you can't, handle on your own, I would recommend coming here. I would recommend it to people who are codependent, people who have self-medicated in any way, whether you have addictions, whether you work too much, high performers. I can call myself a high performer and very judgmental of myself. I would recommend people who are, those perfectionists that have burnt out, a few weeks of your life. Coming here will change you. You will learn to set boundaries. You will learn to put yourself first. Women who are going through hormonal changes. Again, that's a huge part of women's mental health. Once you reach a certain age, you're not the same person. Things change as your hormones fluctuate. It's not you, it's your hormones. So sometimes you may not have ever experienced mental health issues, and as your hormones change, you change. So I would say, if you're a woman who's going through hormonal changes, this is a great program. It will help you deal with those things that you can recognize. Okay, this is something that I can cope with these skills that I've learned. It'll make it better. I truly feel like this is a great program for men and women, but as a woman, I can say it's a great place to start to understand and to value yourself at this point in your life. I would recommend this program to, again, the loss of that a lot of people encounter after retiring. I have seen a lot of my cohorts who, when they retired, they didn't know what their life was. What were they supposed to do after that? And I've seen them come to a point where they appreciate their life after retirement. So that's another thing that I would think, because it's a loss of your identity. So I would highly recommend Solstice to those people.
And the last question, why are you glad you chose Solstice?
I am so glad I chose Solstice. I can say my life changed completely. I have made friends for life, and I learned everything. I learned the tools that I needed to do the hard things that are required in life. I now have a deep appreciation of the small things. I've learned to see my worth, and I hadn't really seen that ever. So yeah, self-worth. And I feel empowered. If it weren't for Solstice, I wouldn't be this empowered person that I am now. Now that I speak up now that I believe I can do it. And, it's not just toxic positivity. It's not just, oh yeah, this is all gonna be great and you're gonna be fine. No, it's feeling the feelings. It's being able to go through those moments that you think you can't, and you learn that you can. You learn how to respond rather than react. I have no regrets. I am very lucky and very blessed to have found Solstice, and I recommend it to anybody going through mental health struggles. Thank you.